The Orioles have looked really bad this year, but somehow it's getting worse. I'll recap their series when they were swept again by the Twins, coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Orioles fans. Today is Friday, May 16th, 2025, and welcome back into the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb. And coming up on today's episode, we will recap the Orioles series this week against the Minnesota Twins, as they were unfortunately swept once again by the hottest team in baseball, the Twins, who have now won 12 games in a row, 11 games in a row. 6 of those, either way, have been against the Orioles. And now the O's are 12 games under 500, a season high. We'll give you what went right, what went wrong, and a shout out to some players from all 3 games against Minnesota. We'll talk about Chayce McDermott coming back to the big leagues. We'll talk about Gunnar Henderson getting hot. We'll talk about Charlie Morton looking better in his new role, and even Ramon Aras coming off the injured list. Plus much more coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast, which is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Thank you, everyone, for your patience as we are back here for the first episode since Tuesday. Hope you enjoyed the postcasts by Luke in the meantime. As I mentioned on the YouTube channel here, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the Locked On Orioles YouTube channel. Got COVID. Wasn't fun. Still have some symptoms. I am worlds better than I was on Wednesday and Thursday as I'm recording here on Friday. Still not great, but wanted to power through and get you at least one episode talking about what was a despicable series and a one I don't really want to talk about that much, but I'm covering this team and still going to kind of break down what went right and a lot of what went wrong against Minnesota this week. Hopefully the weekend will help me out and I'll be fully recovered and sound more like myself on Monday's episode. But either way, here we are. Thanks for your patience. And let's start with game 1 between the Orioles and the Twins. Game 1 was supposed to be played Tuesday. Weather was terrible. It got postponed. And it turned into a daytime single admission doubleheader on Wednesday. So we begin with game 1. It started about noon on Wednesday. It was a 6-3 loss for the Orioles to the Twins. And we start with what went right. And that is Gunnar Henderson is red hot right now. Gunnar Henderson went 2 for 4 in Wednesday's game 1 with a 2-run homer in the third. He also drew a walk. He had 3 hard hit balls. And then he followed up with another 2 for 5 with 3 hard hit balls in game 2. And Gunnar was heating up at the end of April, but he has just been incredible since the calendar turned to May. This month, entering Thursday, he was hitting .370 with a .420 on base and a .652 slugging. That is a .1072 OPS and a .205 WRC plus, meaning he's more than twice as good as the league average hitter. So far in the month of May, he's working an incredible 59% hard hit rate in the month. And this was snapped on Thursday with his offer, but he had a 19-game on-base streak going that was snapped in the final game of this series. And seemingly, Gunnar, who had the intercostal kind of midsection injury that kept him out for most of spring training, it kept him out for about 2 weeks on the injured list at the beginning of the year. And he came back in early April, but he was clearly not himself for those first 2 weeks. We were getting maybe a 60%, 70% version of Gunnar Henderson, and that's still a lot better than a lot of players. It was still helpful for the Orioles to have Gunnar back in the lineup, but you could tell he wasn't himself. He was hitting the ball on the ground too much. His swing wasn't fully back. As he's getting healthier, you can see it. And a hat tip to Bob Phelan from over at the Orioles on the Verge podcast, which does a great job covering the minor leagues, but also the major league team as well. Bob's kind of been on this for a couple of weeks where he basically looked at Gunnar's stats from, I think it was 4 weeks from when he was activated off the injured list. And 4 weeks is about the time for hitters to get fully ramped up in spring training. And that is when Gunnar really turned it on in late April. So hat tip to Bob for that one. It's like he just needed to have his spring training during the regular season. Once he did that, Gunnar Henderson is back to all-star MVP level form. He's trying to do his best to carry the Orioles offense right now. I mean, it was great to see him. His 2-run homer was with a runner in scoring position. It gave the Orioles a 3-0 lead early in that game on Wednesday, so that was certainly good to see. But he can't do all the carrying because those 3 runs that the Orioles got, well, they were the only runs that they scored in that game, run one coming in the 3rd inning. Gunnar trying to do all he could for the rest of that game, but didn't really help him out. Now, what went wrong was Dean Kramer's 4th inning in this game. Dean was coming off of back-to-back incredible starts. We had the terrible April. The calendar turned to May. He was great in his last 2 starts. For the first time in his career, he went back-to-back starts of at least 7 innings. He was facing the same Twins team that he faced last week when he struck out 8 over 7 innings of 2-run ball. It can be tough to face the same offense in back-to-back starts. You really need to be able to change things up. And Dean was not terrible in this game, but he did start 3 scoreless. He was looking good. The Orioles get him the lead with the 3 runs in the bottom of the 3rd. And then Dean just has the 1 blow-up inning. He gives up 4 runs in the top of the 4th. That was all he would give up in the game. He goes 5 2/3, 4 runs, 7 hits, 4 Ks, 2 walks, and 2 homers on 95 pitches for Kramer on Wednesday. But it was just that 4th inning that got to him. As soon as the Orioles get him the lead, on the first pitch of the top of the 4th, he hangs a curveball to Brooks Lee, who hits it over the center field fence for a solo homer to make it 3-1. I mean, Cedric Mullins was inches away from an incredible home run robbery on that play, but it tips off his glove and goes out to make it a 3-1 game. And then Kramer didn't really settle in. He's allowed an infield hit. He goes 0-2 to Willie Castro and ends up walking him. And I thought he was going to get out of it. He gets a strikeout. He gets a flyout. It makes it 2-on and 2-out in a 3-1 game. He's facing the number 9 hitter, the backup catcher, Christian Vasquez. And you're like, all right, Dean's going to get out of this. Yeah, the solo homer was tough, but you're up 3-1 going into the bottom of the 4th. He's still cruising along. The pitch count was low. You're feeling good about where Kramer was sitting. And then he hangs another curveball. 0-1 pitch to Vasquez. Curveball down the middle. Vasquez torches one out to left center field. A 3-run homer that gives the Twins a 4-3 lead. And again, Kramer would settle down over that. But as Vasquez was hitting 9th, it was his first home run of the season. And Christian Vasquez is better than your average backup catcher. He's been a starter for a while, just kind of been a number 2 since he's gotten to Minnesota. But entering Thursday, and this is something that Ben McDonald and Kevin Brown were talking about on the broadcast this week, the Orioles have been lambasted by the bottom 3rd of other teams' orders, 7, 8, and 9 hitters, and specifically number 9 hitters. Now, it's not always the case, but generally the case. Your number 9 hitter is going to be your worst, if not one of the worst hitters that is in your lineup every time out there. And the Orioles against number 9 hitters are getting beat like they are number 3 hitters. Number 9 hitters entering Thursday against the Orioles, that was including the Vasquez homer on Wednesday, 285, 359, 431 slash with a 126 WRC plus. That was 9 whole hitters against the Orioles. And that was before Deshaun Kiersey hit a 2-run homer from the 9 spot in Thursday's game. So those numbers even went up. That is just a weird problem. I don't have the time or the ability right now to diagnose why exactly the Orioles can't get the number 9 hitters out, but it's certainly hurting them. Not a place you want to be. Now, again, Kramer did settle down some, and he pitched into the 6th, and he kept it at 4 runs, but it was that curveball that got him in trouble. And again, he just had 0 command of his splitter. It's his strikeout pitch, and he was losing it. I mean, way up and out, arm side. Maybe the worst splitter command I've ever seen from Kramer. And he doesn't necessarily need it to be good. I mean, he didn't really have his splitter last week against the Twins. And again, he went 7 innings of 2-run ball. But in that start against Minnesota last week, he was 58% of his pitches in the zone. On Wednesday, it was 45. When you're a little more wild, when you feel like you have to come into the middle of the plate a little more often, you're going to get hit more often. Kramer wasn't terrible. I mean, 5 2/3, 4 runs would be pretty good compared to what the Orioles have gotten from some of their starters this year, but it's not great. And the shout out for this game one, the shout out goes to Ramon Arias, who returned from the IL on Wednesday. He was out for 11 days with a hamstring issue, kind of just like late in 2024. The Arias injury came at like the same time as a Jordan Westburg injury. Even with Emmanuel Rivera hitting, it is nice to have Ramon Arias back in the lineup. He's been the 5th best Orioles hitter this year by WRC+, 4th if you don't count Rivera, who's been great, but such a small sample size. And Arias is batting 9th. He drew a walk in his first plate appearance, ended up scoring on a Ryan Mountcastle RBI double in the 3rd that put the Orioles up 1-0. And they're going to need him even more because Jordan Westburg was supposed to be on a similar timeline. He was allegedly going to be starting a rehab assignment later this week and potentially be able to join the Orioles at some point late next week. But the O's earlier this week shut Westberg down from running. He never got into a rehab game. They right now have no timetable on his return from his own hamstring issue, which we already knew was a little more serious than the one that Aras was dealing with. So they went on the IL at similar times. We kind of knew that Westberg was going to take a little bit longer. And now it's not like we're looking at anything season ending right now, but it's going to be longer than a couple of weeks at this point. So you're going to need Aras. I mean, you could argue it could be time to bring back Kobe Mayo, but if Emmanuel Rivera continues to produce and he basically gets on base at least once every single time he's in there, I guess he's going to have that spot. But Aras should continue to be kind of the main third baseman as long as he is feeling good, but couldn't get enough from him, couldn't get enough from Henderson or Kramer, and the Orioles lost game one of the doubleheader 6-3. But they were looking good early in game two. They got maybe their biggest offensive inning of the year. Thought it might lead them to victory. Unfortunately, it did not. And I'll tell you why coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is brought to you by Game Time. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends or family? Maybe it's game day and you suddenly realize that you want to be in the stands. That's exactly where Game Time comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last minute tickets without the stress. With the big money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even invite a bigger group to come with you. Game Time makes it possible. Game Time makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app, they actually drop the closer you get to first pitch. And they've got incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. And Game Time is the official ticketing partner of Locked On MLB, making it easy to browse the app for exciting, upcoming Orioles games. I mean, if you're looking at this weekend, it's Orioles and Nats. It's the Masson Cup. The Orioles are trying to, once again, save their season. Should be a good weekend. There's some giveaways, but there are still some seats available if you go to Game Time. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB. That is LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. So after the Orioles dropped game one of that doubleheader on Wednesday, they turned to game two, and it looked like they had a chance to win that one. Then they did not, as they fell 8-6 in the second game of the series. Let's start with what went right from game two of the doubleheader. What went right was the Orioles put up their biggest offensive inning of the season. 6 runs they scored in the third off of Twin starter Simeon Woods Richardson was the most they have scored in any inning this season. And Woods Richardson, who kind of went up against the O's last week and had a weird start where they only let him pitch 4 2/3 innings for 1 run, but he only struck out 1 and he only threw 61 pitches. A very odd start, but he had the Orioles on their toes. And this didn't start well for the Orioles, this game. I mean, they were down 4-0 early. The Orioles swung and missed on 7 four-seam fastballs in the first inning alone against Wood Richardson. That was the second most whiffs of any inning for a pitcher in baseball so far this year, and all on one pitch, a 93-mile-an-hour four-seam fastball. They just couldn't get to it. And I was like, here we go again with this offense. Fastballs down the middle. Yeah, it's a pitch with some solid ride, and he hides it well, but like they can't get to it at all. And they were down 4-0. And you're like, here's the same script. But they did something they haven't done a lot this year, which is the Orioles fought back with 1 out in the third. Jackson Holliday, Ryan Mountcastle, and Gunnar Henderson all singled in a row. The Gunnar hit was an RBI single to hit with the runner in scoring position, got the Orioles on the board, made it a 4-1 game. They ended up loading the bases with 2 outs for Cedric Mullins, and Mullins had the big swing. I thought the swing that maybe, not guaranteeing anything, obviously, but maybe could have broken the Orioles out of this team-wide slump. He gets a pitch he can handle down the middle, hanging breaking ball. Mullins deposits that thing into the flag court for a grand slam to flip the game on its head, put the Orioles up 5-4, and they weren't done because 2 pitches later, Heston Kjerstad unloads into right center field on a fastball for a solo homer. They go back-to-back to make it 6-4. 6 runs again, the largest 1-inning output of the season for the Orioles. I mean, for Mullins, that gave him 2 multi-hit games in his last 3 after he was 1 for 31 to begin the month of May. We know how red hot he was in April. He was slumping ridiculously, so that was good to see. And Kjerstad, I mean, that guy hadn't homered since April 18th, so it's been almost a month. So it was good for him to leave the yard on Wednesday. And again, because they had given up runs early, it's still only 6-4. It's still only a 2-run lead, but you were in such a big hole like they've been in so many games this year, and they've just fallen over and died in those games. It was incredible, refreshing to see them just build this rally on a guy who really stifled them the first time around the order. And then as soon as Jackson Holliday came up for his second at-bat, the Orioles made adjustments. That was the great part as well. They made in-game adjustments. They figured out a pitcher who just destroyed them the first time through. It was everything we have wanted. I thought this would get the offense going. And big swing after big swing in that inning. And then they didn't do anything else. They did not score for the rest of the game. They scored 9 runs in this series. 3 in the third inning of game 1, 6 in the third inning of game 2, and then, of course, they got shut out in game 3, which we'll talk about. So a couple of big innings, and that was it. There are still problems across the board. This offensive inning was everything we want to see from the Orioles. Walks, hits, homers, plate discipline, jumping on pitches you can drive, everything. And then after one inning, it all was swept away. So yeah, it's what went right. But it makes you think like, wow, they got all this to go right in this inning, and it still was not enough to win this game. And some of that was because of what went wrong. And that was Chayce McDermott's command in this one. Now, Cade Povich, when there wasn't a rainout, was initially slated to start the scheduled Wednesday game, the game 2 of this series. But once it was rained out Tuesday and Wednesday became a doubleheader, the Orioles kind of switched up the pitching plan a little bit, which does make sense. The Orioles do not have a lot of off days coming up. Starting with the doubleheader Wednesday, it was a scheduled 16 games in 15 days. That's not a great thing to do your pitching staff, but that is what the schedule plays for the Orioles right now after they had so many off days in April. And so the Orioles used it as a chance to give Cade Povich, who's been struggling some, a couple of extra days of rest. He is, of course, slated to start game 1 tonight against the Nationals, so no injury there. They just pushed him back a couple of days. But the doubleheader is kind of the perfect time to do the pushback, because with a doubleheader, you get an extra 27th player to add to your roster, and it can be a 14th pitcher just for that doubleheader. So it allows you to give somebody a spot start, and that is what they did with Chayce McDermott. Because when you have 16 games in 15 days, you will have to call up a 6th starter at some point. You just can't get through it without that. So the best time to do it is during the doubleheader when you have that extra roster spot. So the Orioles actually played this smartly by moving Povich back and calling up McDermott, and they had a pitcher at least somewhat ready in McDermott to come up and get that start. So McDermott gets the call, the Orioles' #1 pitching prospect who came over in the Trey Mancini trade. He made his MLB debut last year with 1 start in Miami against the Marlins, was okay, then had a shoulder injury back in AAA and was done for the year. Then he was competing for a spot this spring training, had a lat injury, was shut down early in spring, and did some rehab, returned. He made 3 rehab starts. His most recent one was Friday night in AAA when he threw 65 pitches. And the Orioles knew, like, hey, we're not getting 6 scoreless from this spot start from Chayce McDermott, his second big league start, but they figured, hey, he's got good stuff. We know we're not going to push him over more than maybe 70 pitches, so let's just have him give what he can. We know we have Charlie Morton, who's on 3 days rest, can give us bulk out of the bullpen if we need it. And McDermott did some good things and some bad things. Like, he seemed to be health-wise 100%, and he was on regular rest, while as Trevor Rogers, who could have been an option, he actually started Saturday in AAA, so he would not have been on regular rest to start Wednesday. So that's why McDermott was the better situation, better choice between those two. But McDermott basically threw all fastballs, and just for a while there kind of didn't know where they were going. 46 of his 65 pitches that he threw were 4-seam fastballs. And it's a pitch with great ride, right? It's got solid velocity in the low to mid, or maybe mid 90s, I'd call it. But 19 inches of induced vertical break on average is incredible, up to 22, 23. And some of them were perfectly located. That led to him striking out 3 in the first inning. Some were nowhere close. That led to him walking 2 and allowing a run and having to strand the bases loaded in the top of the first inning. And then, he ends up with 3 walks and a hit batter on the day. It just ran his pitch count up. He ends up going just 3 innings on this one. Again, exactly 65 pitches, 4 runs, 4 hits, 5 Ks, 3 walks, and a homer for the right-hander in his first start of the year. Just 4 hard hit balls against him. He did give up a 2-run homer in the second inning to allow the Twins to expand the lead. He gave another run on a base hit in the third inning. Now, the fastball was great, and he showed us in this game how good that Chayce McDermott fastball can be. He got 5 whiffs on that pitch. The velocity, again, will spike it up there to 95, 96, but he's more going to sit 93, 94. But when he locates up in the zone, that pitch is hard to hit because of all that rising action, or at least the ride that he has on it shows. But we just didn't see a lot from the off speed. He sprinkled in a slider, sweeper, curveball, changeup, but he threw them all 10 or less times. I mean, he threw one changeup and two curveballs. So it's not like we got to see a lot of his breaking stuff, and we'll want to see more of it as he definitely does get more chances to start in the big leagues this year. You can see that the goods are there, the stuff is there, but it obviously needs more polish. The command has always been, besides injuries, the question for Chayce McDermott. Because he was the 27th man, he was sent back to AAA after the game, so he is back in the Norfolk rotation for now. The Orioles will absolutely call on him again this year, but it was up and down, I would say. We saw the good, we saw the bad in his first start of the season. And the shout out for the game 2 of the doubleheader goes to Charlie Morton, who probably had his best outing as an Oriole. Comes in relief for McDermott in the 4th inning after the Orioles' big 6-run third. They're leading 6-4. And Morton was great. He gives them 3 innings of 1-run ball, 4 Ks, 1 walk, 2 hits. He did allow a solo homer, but that was it on 46 pitches, just 2 hard hit balls. He was great. He had better command across the board. He threw some good changeups. He was able to rely on his curveball more. And Ben McDonald on the Masson broadcast did say he thought Morton's arm slot looked a little lower, so maybe that was the change. I don't think we have the arm angle data yet. It populates once a week. So once that's published, we'll get to see if he actually was dropping his arm a little bit lower, and maybe that gave him better command. But if he can do this out of the bullpen, he can still help this team. His last 2 relief appearances, he has combined for 5 innings of 1-run ball with just 1 walk. That's what we need from Charlie Morton if he is going to be kind of this swingman long reliever type. And maybe he can still help this team. He can help ease in arms like McDermott or like Trevor Rogers to know that, hey, we come up here, we're getting healthy, we're trying to help this team. We know Charlie Morton is behind us. And if we need Morton to give us 2 or 3 innings of length out of the bullpen every 3 or 4 days, he can do it. I'm not saying this means Morton's going to stick around for the rest of the year. I'm not saying this means Morton's going to jump back into the rotation at any point, but at the very least, in his last 2 relief outings, of course, both in losses, although Morton did give the Orioles a chance to win this game. He legitimately gave them a chance to win this game. The other parts of the team did not convert it. Now, they are still winless in games that Morton pitches in, but this one was not at all his fault. That's one of the first times you can say that in the games this season, but he looked good. Unfortunately, Yennier Cano had another horrible outing. And he came in the 8th with the Orioles up 6-5 after Gregory Soto had held the lead in the 7th. Base runner, stolen base, balk, 3-run homer, and the Twins go up 8-6. And that was that on the ball game because, as I said, the Orioles, despite getting 6 runs in the 3rd, they had decided they were done scoring. They were done scoring in this game. They had opted out of scoring any other runs, and the O's had officially dropped the series, getting swept in the doubleheader. But they had maybe their best starting pitcher on the mound Thursday. Tomoyuki Sugano taking the hill, the stopper. It's all right, let's at least not get swept by this team again. Turn things around. Let's get a good start from Sugano. And the start was not bad. It wasn't great, but it wasn't bad. Didn't matter. The offense didn't really show up anyway. Talk about what happened for the O's to get swept and shut out on Thursday to finish off the show coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is also brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs, the NBA playoffs, are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. And FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. Now, after a big Nuggets win on Thursday night, they push it to Game 7. I'll tell you right now, I don't know if the Nuggets are going to beat the Thunder in Game 7, but I'm putting the overs on every Nikola Jokic stat line for that Game 7. He is going to do everything in his power to will Denver to the next round. And if you are new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So we finish things up with a look at what happened on Thursday afternoon in Game 3 of this series. Final score, the Twins 4 and the Orioles nothing. The O's swept again by the Twins, who have won 11 in a row, and the Orioles now 15-27. They are a season-high 12 games under 500. What went right on Thursday? Well, Tomoyuki Sugano does pretty much keep chugging along. It wasn't his best start, but he was still very good in this one. His final line from Thursday, 6 1/3 innings of 4-run ball on 6 hits. He struck out 3, walked 1, and allowed 2 homers on 103 pitches. He was fighting his command a little bit, like more 3-ball counts than you usually see, but he only walked 1 batter. He gave up 3 runs in the 3rd inning, kind of got away from himself a little bit. It was really interesting. The big blow was the 2-run homer in the 3rd by Deshaun Kiersey, the number 9 hitter. Just his second career homer that put the Twins up 2-0 at that point. It was a 3-2 count to Kiersey, and Adley and Sugano just could not get on the same page. A lot of shakes by Sugano to Adley, a lot of disagreement about what exactly they should throw, had to call time, go through the pitch com multiple times before deciding what to throw. It ended up being a right-on-left sweeper, which we know is already not a good pitch selection. Didn't throw it in a good place. He ran it too far in, and Kiersey hit it into the flag court to make it 2-0. I would really love to know who won out, whether that was Adley's decision or that was ultimately Sugano's decision to throw that pitch. There was clearly a disagreement. The sweeper was not the right pitch there, and it got hit out. Then on the next pitch, Byron Buxton was just all over a fastball for a solo homer to make it 3-0. And as we know with the Orioles offense, that was pretty much it for that one. He did go up a 4th run. He went back out there in the 7th. It was awesome to see him kind of settle it down, roll through 6, went out there in the 7th, couple of, blooper grounder hits, ended up getting a run home, whatever. I wasn't really concerned with that, but to pitch into the 7th is much more than we're getting from most Orioles starters. He was kind of spraying his 4-seam fastball, maybe even more than we've seen from Sugano, at least since kind of his first couple starts of the year. He was heavy splitter as usual. He's getting some swings and misses there, just not as many whiffs. Even though he's not a whiff pitcher, just you need a few more than the 5 that he got to really roll through some of these lineups. And it wasn't his pinpoint command, but he still certainly pitched well enough to win the game. The Orioles offense obviously did not do that. And that's what went wrong. The Orioles offense, it just stinks right now. They were shut out for the 6th time this season. They were only shut out 8 times in all of 2024. It's May 16th, and there's been 6 shutouts already this year in, 42 games? I mean, what's going on here? They had their one real chance in the 5th. Started with an Adley hit by pitch and an O'Hearn single to make it 1st and 2nd, nobody outs in a 3-0 game. And then Tyler O'Neill strikeout, Cedric Mullins strikeout, Emmanuel Rivera ground out, and that was that. No runs. They drew 1 walk in this game. Now, they did only strike out 6 times, and they did have 13 hard hit balls. So generally, that's going to lead to some production. Those are combos that generally lead to runs, and they didn't have any. It's really hard to diagnose what exactly is happening here. Andy Koska had a good story in the Baltimore Banner on Friday morning that you should check out, where he talked to multiple different sources who know hitting and know the game. And everyone had their own kind of opinions, but also were saying it's very weird how much the Orioles are struggling. I think the biggest issue is they've got a low on-base percentage. They've got the 3rd highest strikeout rate as a team on offense in baseball this year, so that's mostly done them in. But when they put the ball in play, they hit it hard. They're still 5th in hard hit rate. They're still 6th in barrel rate. But even when they avoid strikeouts, there's really nothing to show for it. They're not really attacking maybe early in counts enough. They're not hitting fastballs well enough. That is some of it. They're being patient. They're seeing a lot of pitches, but it's not leading to them getting the pitch to hit. They're almost being too patient and letting the good pitches go by while also letting some balls go by. I'm just kind of at a loss with this team, especially this offense right now. With the pitching, it's yeah, they're injured. They don't have enough talent. It is what it is. With the offense, it's they have the talent. They're getting healthier, and it's, that's just general noises is what's going on with this offense. It's pretty much all I have to say from, hey, Chris Paddock was good. Give him credit. 7 scoreless, but for the Twins starter, but I don't know. I really don't know. Planning potentially next week when I feel a little better to do a fuller breakdown on data-wise and approach-wise, really what's in the world is going on with this offense right now. But it's a lot of different small things that are just coming together to make them look terrible pretty much night in and night out. And the shout-out for Thursday goes to Cionel Perez. He has been objectively horrible this year. We cannot argue that fact. Dude's coming in now with a 7.64 ERA, but that's after he lowered it. That is good. That is a good thing. Cionel Perez lowering his ERA. He threw a scoreless top of the 9th on Wednesday in game 2 to keep it 8-6. Then he came back out there to relieve Sugano in the 7th on Thursday, got out of a jam, and then pitched a scoreless 8th with a strikeout and a walk, only 1 hard hit ball. Back-to-back scoreless outings for Perez. Definitely his best outing of the season was the inning and 2/3 scoreless he threw in relief on Thursday. I still think his job is probably in jeopardy. Andrew Kittredge is throwing more and more rehab outings in AAA Norfolk. He's going to be back by the end of May, probably by June 1st at the latest. You would think the number 1 guy on the chopping block, unless anybody else gets injured, would be a Cionel Perez DFA with just how bad he's been. But at the very least, he's given Brandon Hyde something. Back-to-back solid scoreless outings in the back-to-back appearances Wednesday and Thursday. So that's nice to see. And a guy who's been an important part of this Orioles bullpen over the last couple of years. And it's just been, him and many other Orioles have just been terrible so far in 2025. And this season has been terrible so far. And I'm going to be honest with you. If I didn't get COVID this week, I would have, recapped everything you need to know from the games maybe on Thursday, and this Friday episode would have been me burying the Orioles. You may have noticed last Friday I said, hey, if the Orioles don't win this series against the Angels, I'm going to bury them. They won 2 out of 3. I gave them some hope. I said, all right, let's get back home against the Twins team. Let's figure it out. They get swept by the Twins. If I had the lack of sickness and the energy to do another episode, I would bury them right now. But the Orioles are lucky. I don't have the energy to do that. I'm barely making it through this one. So they have one more chance. They've got a Nationals team coming in this weekend. I know the Nats took 2 out of 3 from the Orioles in DC just a couple of weeks ago, but this Nats team stinks too. The Orioles stink 15-17, but this Nats team is 18-17. They stink too. Mackenzie Gore, the lefty, who the Orioles did get a couple of hits off last time, goes against Cade Povich tonight at 7. Jake Irvin goes for the Nats Saturday at 4. We need him to pitch like Cole Irvin. Kyle Gibson goes for the Orioles on Saturday. We need him to pitch like Bob Gibson. And on Sunday, it's Zach Eflin versus Mike Soroka. That should be a thumbs up for the Orioles. So hopefully they can win a series. If not, it's burying time for this 2025 season on the show next week. And I will be back on Monday to recap the series between the O's and the Nats. But until then, thanks for your patience. Thanks for getting through this episode with me. Hopefully I'll be fully recovered by Monday. Until then, I'm Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.